Warning. The following contains spoilers. Please be advised.
We did it.
Wait,
Maybe.
don't fucking say that.
I checked it when I came back.
Alright. Welcome back to the Buffalo Game Space Game Club number 3. We're recording on January 24th, 2017. Or should I say re-recording on January 24th?
It's part 2.
Yeah, but yeah, good way of looking at it.
The podcast strikes back.
I am your host, Pat Kesterson.
I'm Greg Giles.
And I'm Chris Langford.
And we played Inside.
And then we recorded a podcast, and now we're recording
We're recording another. And the other one was so good, too.
The other one was good. This one will be better. This is going to be way better.
We had 5 people in that one. That's unheard of in Game Club history.
Ryan Millette.
Wherever you are.
Well, really, he just can't be here, but he's not dead.
No, he's dead. He's dead.
Dead in podcast land.
I stand corrected.
Maybe he might get resurrected.
All right.
But he, as of this time, of this recording, he is dead.
Okay. All right.
But
well, that's... I mean, he's my roommate, so that actually affects me a lot.
Yeah, you might want to start working out rent.
Yeah, I got to think about it. You keep going. I'm going to think for a second.
All right, yeah, take your time. So, again, we played Inside, developed by Playdead, a little studio you might have heard of. Made Limbo a couple years ago. Actually, when did Limbo come out? It feels like it's so long ago.
Well, probably because it was.
God, it feels like it was in the first wave of like indie games.
It was one of the first
wasn't
big,
it?
Yeah, that came out around the same time as like Braid.
It was like Meat Boy Braid era, yeah.
So early Xbox Live Arcade.
It's been re-released so many goddamn times. All right, take a guess what year.
Limbo?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 09.
2010.
Greg's right. 2010, July 21st specifically. It came out in the summer of
I was
arcade.
going to say July 21st.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's impressive. Did you look that up before we started?
No, I wasn't going to say it.
Oh, you ruined it. Gonna make you look so smart. Okay.
I'm still smart, though.
Okay. But...
I'm shaking my head furiously.
All right. So it was made by Playdead. The studio of 25 employees still, even after all this time. I guess they like being small. But the game started development after Limbo's release just a couple months after. It's in Unity this time instead of the custom engine. And a little fun fact, partially funded by the Danish Film Institute. Mm-hmm. I just find that fun. It's
not an uncommon thing in countries that aren't the United States.
It really isn't, but just like the concept of this game in particular, like where a little boy gets blown apart by shockwaves and like blood, like that just makes...
I wonder what the government thought when they reviewed this. I mean,
well, they saw Limbo, so they had to have known.
Also, I gotta think, isn't Danish film like sort of legendary for its like avant-garde weirdness?
That's
like,
just any European.
I think you might have made that up. That sounds like it's like it could be true.
Yeah,
but there's potentially also no factual basis.
It may not be.
I feel like that's literally just a European thing.
Yeah,
and specifically European countries that don't speak English, so we just see the foreign language and subtitles on the screen, and we go, "Oh, avant-garde." We can't understand it. We're
it's
not
just
in
a
their
normal
culture.
Movie, and I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. So, I played it on the Xbox. What did you guys play it on?
I played on PC.
PC.
PS4.
Wow. So we got one for each one. That's actually really nice. I was kind of afraid we were only gonna all be on one. We touched on this a little bit before. I guess we'll just hit all the same notes again. So it got 92 on the consoles, but on PC it only got an 86. And I guess it's because it's a platformer, but you didn't see anything that...
I mean, no, I played through this game with everything on high, and I mean, there was no problems. There's no bugs. I think PC gamers are just more fickle.
I 100% believe that.
I mean, as one of them, we're...
I mean,
we're
understanding yourself is key in a situation like this.
I think, the other thing, too, is that I mean, it could just be because it's a 2D platformer, and I mean, it lends itself well to gamepad control, and a lot of PC gamers I think still don't play games with the gamepad. So
Certain ones definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously.
I will say I did play this with a gamepad. I played through the whole thing with my Steam controller. And yeah, I mean, I had no problems with the game. Presentation was beautiful, handled great. I mean, from a technical point of view, there was no issues with it.
Yeah, this was one of my like, especially the intro areas. Like up until this is Greg's gameplay playing in the background. Spotlight on Greg,
Crushing it.
nailing it.
Watch
Right.
me get these coins right here.
You know those are chickens, right?
Oh shit, no I didn't. I might have misunderstood a lot of this game.
Those are baby chicks. All right.
I'm like, worst Sonic game yet.
No, this is the 3D Blast stage where you have to save all the flickies and take them back to the end.
Oh, those are chow like
Chocobos?
That's right.
Chows?
Chocobos are Final Fantasy.
Yeah, we're going to Final
Flickies.
Fantasy now.
Are they called flickies?
Well,
Those-
in the old Sonic, and then Sonic Adventure
Had
was Chows,
yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Anyways,
yeah.
You've now
let's keep
officially told me more about Sonic than I think I've ever learned about Sonic in my
Actually,
entire life.
You're missing out.
This part we're watching right now, I don't know if you want to rewind it, because like I think it's actually that puzzle that I just went through was a pretty good encapsulation of like kind of what this game is getting at. So like
Grinding up a group into one thing.
you find these little chicks and they're so cute and they're following you around and it's really fun, and then you end up like pulling the puzzle that comes up is there's this giant machine and you have to lure these little chicks into like the intake, like the air intake of this machine, and then it shoots them out this giant chute to knock off like a box, and it doesn't kill them, but like
One of them
shockingly-
died in mine. One did die in my
really?
run through, and I felt absolutely
oh wait,
horrible.
actually no, there's one dead. That you're right. So I feel like this little puzzle right here is kind of like what the game's about, where there's just like life being
It's the
just pushed through a machine to achieve some end, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember that initial part. I felt so terrible after that.
I was gonna say when I did it, when I played through, I was very glad to see like none of them died on
Yeah,
my
like,
playthrough.
are they all still moving?
And I was like, oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah,
and now watching
okay.
this, I'm like, oh, well, they can take even that away from me.
Yeah. No, one dies.
So to kind of finish up on the backstory of the game, there's another just an interesting tidbit, this little story. Now, this actually happened when the game released in June. So it released in June on the Xbox, PC, July, then August it was the PS4. But in June, the two heads of the studio straight up split. One of them left, and he left to the tune of what translates into American dollars 7.2 million of them. Which, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Apparently, just since 2015, they straight up haven't talked, and leading all the way through to a certain point that the Danish Business Authority actually had to step in to basically separate the two. And then in July, one of them actually finally left in exchange for his shares. They gave him the 50 million Danish krones, which is a $7.2 million, in exchange for his shares. And this just blows my mind that this was happening, like, obviously through the whole development, and then, like, it finalized in the actual release month of the game. Like, that's got to be a little nerve-wracking for just a random employee of the studio seeing mommy and daddy fighting while you're trying to put this game out, and then hoping...
That must have been the worst. Yeah, as an
Yeah, like-
employee, man.
It could not make for a fun,
Especially, yeah.
place of employment.
Yeah, like, I'm surprised this game is as good as it is after finding that out. Because it just,
Yeah.
like, that's just not as... I would never imagine that situation would be a place you could produce a good game.
Yeah. I mean, it just, that just blows my mind. That it all was happening, and unlike some other studios, Infinity Ward, just was, they didn't air their dirty laundry. This was happening, but nobody knew. Like, we're not going to make a Real Housewives of Atlanta level publicity event about this. Like, it just happened.
Yeah.
And now we've moved on.
Yeah.
And the dude's gotten a shit ton of money. And I mean, it probably is, it's for the best. Like, if they weren't talking, they were butting heads, you know, like, It sucks, but at least they separated. The game came out good, and
Came out great. I mean,
yeah,
definitely,
so
in a
the
year that
employees are
had-
good. Like it's for the best. I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah.
So on that note, unless you guys have any other trivia facts about the game,
I did want to throw out between the last time we spoke about this game and
what
now,
other time? What?
the current regime at Playdead has actually been working on a new game, and they've released a teaser image on Twitter
Oh, really?
for it. Yeah, and it's similar, kind of dark and gloomy aesthetic with what looks like some sort of asteroid or something crashing down to Earth. And I believe they posted this at the end of last
Ooh,
week.
That does look cool.
Yeah, it was right after we recorded the first run.
Yeah. So without any other context, so
Oh, that does look pretty neat.
I'm sure it'll be.
It looks similar to like what
It
Inside.
actually does look very similar, except the fact that the explosion actually has like red fire in it now. That being the only source of color, whereas inside the only color I'm pretty sure is the kid's shirt and blood.
Some of the electronics. I mean, those hats.
Oh, the mind control helmet
Yeah.
things. Oh, I'm like, what? Something's happening behind me. I really should like sit so I can see the damn screen, but whatever.
Meh.
I don't need to see it. I played it. I lived it. I mean, that's kind of cool. That looks interesting. I wonder what direction they're going to take now. So they've done basically they did Limbo, which was complete mystery. Inside, without getting too into details yet, I'm pretty sure there was a straight up narrative through that. I mean, it might have been take it from what you will, but events happened over the course of it, and then there was a definitive ending. Whereas Limbo was kind of just a loop. So
I haven't finished Limbo. I don't know that. Spoilers.
it came out 7 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
What's our cutoff point?
There's a
for
statute
spoilers?
of limitations on spoilers.
I go 2 years. Like 2 years. Like I say something outright. For 2 years. After 5 years, I'm just gonna say it. Especially if it's a movie.
I don't.
Games are a little different, but the thing is with Limbo, that ending does not matter at all. For knowing it beforehand or not, because you won't quite understand what it is until you see it yourself. It's special. Dark but special. So yeah, what were you saying?
I don't know.
Oh, fair enough. All right. So on that note, let's get to the critique, which makes it sound like we're going to be really negative and mean to this, but I'm pretty sure for the most part we're pretty positive.
The teardown.
Ooh.
The review.
Hold on, let me delete that out of the
teardown.
down. I kind of want to come up with a different name for this podcast since Game Club, like everybody uses Game Club for this something like this. I kind of want a different name.
I like Game Club.
I like it. It really is like concise, but everybody uses it.
I searched Game Club in podcasts and didn't really come up with anything.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a lot less common than you think. It seems like the obvious name, and that's probably why it's not really used all that much, as everybody thinks
well,
it's
maybe.
like too obvious.
Oh, but either way, the Teardown could be a good secondary name. I'm fucking with the table. The Teardown could be a good secondary name. I like that. So, according to how long does it take to beat, or how long to beat? I can't remember the name of the website, but the story's rocking about 3.5 hours, 4.5 if you do all the extra stuff. I could believe that.
I didn't do all the extra stuff, but I'm also really bad at video games, so it took me about 5 hours to get through the whole thing.
Fair
3.5
enough. Honesty.
Seemed 3.5,
I
4
think
for me probably.
I was probably around 4, maybe like 4:15. I don't know exactly. I did do all the extra stuff. Did you?
I did like half of them.
Some of them? Okay. By the extra stuff, I mean there was little hidden areas that you found, and then sometimes you had to solve a puzzle to do a thing. And if you do 13 of them, it unlocks a 14th one that you can then go do, solve another puzzle and get a hidden ending, which we'll get into later. So, on that note, game time. It's a platformer. It's 2.5D. It's pretty much Limbo, except newer.
Yeah, it looks like this game is clearly like, all right, let's take everything we learned in Limbo and start from the beginning and make a way better thing. Because anybody that makes games knows that at the end of a project, if you had known what you know by the end of a project at the beginning, you would have struck problem. I mean, for me, it's like every time it's like, okay, I could have been a lot stronger at the start of this, and I'd have something better now. So, that's a lot of what Inside looks like to me.
Yeah, I'd say it's very obviously iteration on what they did previously.
Yeah, it's a huge step up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Limbo was a 2D platformer, as is Inside. The art style was, while bleak, it was vastly different, where everything was kind of in silhouette and very two-dimensional. Inside has some very well-designed and fully realized three-dimensional set pieces, essentially, that your character explores with a very, I guess, painterly style.
Yeah. But it's definitely, it's like way more visually complex, but it's mechanically simpler, I think.
Yes.
And cleaner. Definitely mechanically.
I mean,
cleaner.
mechanically, yeah. It felt like, there's two buttons and then the joystick itself.
Yeah.
Like jump, interact, and then move.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly what Limbo had, but I felt like I had way more control over this kid than I did in Limbo.
Limbo had the exact same set of controls.
Okay.
You could do the exact same thing. The difference, I think, there's several, but one of the differences was that the character you control Inside is much more physical in how he reacts to his environment, whereas the character in Limbo basically just blinked and ran back and forth. In this, we're watching a clip now where he's running across a clearing towards a building, and as he was running to the building, there was a line of people in the background being marched in, and through no control of the player, the kid actually, you can watch him turn his head and look at the people and observe things that are going on in his surroundings as you run around.
He has presence.
Yes.
He feels like he's like a dude is actually there, that he's not just, things aren't just happening around him, he's in them.
Yeah, and that detail's not just for show, too. Like, it definitely is one of the ways that they clue you in on what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
They do that Tomb Raider thing where you walk by
and you start looking at it.
Yeah, he just starts looking at the thing that, you should kind of maybe be interacting with.
It's a nice little nod without, like, beating them overhead with a HUD or, like, a waypoint.
Right. It's one of the ways that this game avoids a HUD, right?
Yeah.
That's another really extremely notable thing about it, is there's no HUD.
I don't think there's even, like, a tutorial button prompt thing where, like, you hit A. Like,
There's
it's
not
just
even
in it.
And this actually kind of threw me when I first started the game. When you start it, it just shows Playdead's Inside in text and a shot of a cliffside leading into a valley. And it doesn't even say press start. And it took me a little while to work out I had to hit start to actually start the game and get things moving. It's in its presentation of what the player can and cannot do, it is extremely minimal, and I think that works well to its benefit.
And it's consistent.
Yes.
Another reason it works is that the game is very consistent in sort of its rule set. And so, like, aside from the obvious physics limitations and things like that, the game will almost never ask you, like, the answer is never go left. Like, it's almost always go right. And they're extremely consistent about that. And I guess it's little details like that really cut out a lot of confusion, because you kind of, like, pretty quickly you understand how the game is kind of thinking in a way, I guess you could say. So when you're unsure of something, it's really kind of, the game has trained you pretty well to kind of think of this game, the problems a certain way, so it's really easy to overcome.
When there's only so many things, it's you just follow the game logic. When you have only let's just say, I can't remember exactly what, but 4 mechanics, how can they mix and match those 4 things over the course of the hours? Like, the logic of the game, now taking the tools that they gave you. And since there's so few of them, you can very efficiently go through and like, okay, they want me to do this, 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 and this. This is what they presented me with.
And then it's just combinations on that, right?
Yeah. And that's it. It's since it reminded me in that sense, kind of like, I don't know if any of you guys played this, but like Battlefield 1943 or like the original Titanfall, there was only like 8 weapons and like 3 Titans in the first game, but that meant that they could super fine tune the meta of those things, since there was not like 25 things to deal with. and it made it for a very tight experience. Same thing applies here. That helps because I'm not really a platformer person. Just not my cup of tea, and not that it's bad.
Well, I think one of the things this game does very well in terms of not being a platformer, even though it plays like one, is that there are enemies and there are puzzles, but it's not like Super Mario Brothers where
Right.
It's not a straight up.
There's no Twitch-based gameplay where you're
Exactly.
required to hit the exact combination of actions at the exact time in order to continue on and survive. The focus is on conveying a story.
Well,
So it's almost, I think, narrative first and gameplay second.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It's like the difference is that it doesn't. The crux of like what it is doing is puzzle and not mechanical mastery. There's some jumping and a certain amount of like agility you have to have, but it's to the point that where like pretty much anybody could pick it up and do it and not really
Yeah.
have any problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's why it works for me because I'm like you, Pat. I don't usually go for platformers.
Yeah, this game actually reminded me in the terms of its platforming is a lot of the recent Tomb Raiders, where like it's not like super loose jumping, but I have really good control over the character, and it just kind of felt similar, which is good. Like they handle very well. So it's pretty much making it an adventure game at a 2.5D angle. This is 2.5D, right? Or is this still just count as 2?
I think you
It's
could call it
2D gameplay in a 3D environment with 3D
Yeah.
assets. It's as two-dimensional as like
Ooh, this puzzle actually got me. This was one of the first ones that I actually had trouble with. It was the two people where you had to open the door.
Yeah, because I
And to
think
get
this
it.
is the first. This isn't the first time you see this, is it?
No, this is the second time you see it, but it's the first time that you actually have to like, okay, I need to move one here and then one here. I think it's the first time you have two people moving in opposite sections.
Yeah, it was a little weird.
We're talking about the mind control helmets, those little nifty little things, the Inception things.
Actually, this puzzle was pretty easy for me because of a game I play with my girlfriend called Ibn Ab, and it was very reminiscent of the kind of puzzles you get in that game. I thought.
So Greg cheated. Okay.
Cheat, I'm just a goddamn
Did
genius.
you play this game with Ingrid?
Not. Yeah, actually, she did watch me play most of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like this would be a good game to have somebody watching over your shoulder, since it's so aesthetically pleasing.
It is. Like, so much of what's going on in this game is in the atmosphere, the tone, and the sort of messages you can derive from some of the symbols in it that, it's definitely more fun to play it, but it's definitely fun to watch somebody play, too.
Its presentation is incredibly cinematic. I think that while I personally am not one for things like Let's Plays, I could definitely see how someone could watch a Let's Play of this game and get a very similar experience or understanding.
It is very
someone who
simple
plays
too,
through
so
it.
you could like if that person's talking out their thoughts, you could kind of you can see the train of thought and how they figured it out. Another reason why I kind of would like a person of a show is like when weird shit happens, like later on in the game, you can literally look at each other and go, so what was that?
Yeah.
What happened there? You get immediate feedback, which there is some.
Some interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, that's the way of putting
Yeah,
it.
so there's, I mean, maybe, I don't know how far we want to get into it, but yeah, certainly like another thing is like, this game has some stuff going on in it that is similar to like what I get from like literature, where To Kill a Mockingbird, or maybe like, better yet, why can I not remember this movie? The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby, I read it, and I was like, that's a pretty good story. And then, like, over time, I started hearing other things. They're like, well, the billboard with the doctor, that's the eyes of God. And this, Gatsby's the American dream. Well, the bell's the American dream. And I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't know any of that was going on. And this has that.
There's
There's
a lot.
heavy symbolism.
Yes.
Heavy.
Yeah.
To the point where this is one of those games where, like, after a certain point, I started taking that everything I was looking at and doing was a symbol for something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there was any single action at all that wasn't designed to mean something.
I don't think the end message is as like cogent as something that in The Great Gatsby, which is why The Great Gatsby is such a classic, right? Like it ends up making a pretty clear point.
There is a hard ending in that one.
Yeah, well, and also it's just like, I mean, they're very much saying like criticizing the American dream in I think a very clear way. And while this game does appear to be saying something and says something pretty interesting, it's not like, I know in the last podcast we wrestled with it for a long time and we never really put it together. And
I'm kind of curious to see if we can kind of take what we learned from there and see if we can kind of wrestle something a little bit more. Because I'm honestly curious. I found the post Futch was talking about. Well, we'll talk about it later. And I actually read it myself. It's actually pretty well thought out.
Okay. Oh, you're talking? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but we'll bump into that later. I still kind of go with my original take. All right, let's finish the gameplay first. So is there any... We've pretty much covered damn near all of it. Like, it's pretty... Again, there's 2 buttons and a joystick. There is, and it's just the combinations of what mechanics they give you.
Yeah, so you can move, you can jump, you can grab things, you can interact with some buttons and switches.
That scared me for some reason.
That kind of made my heart jump a little bit too.
I don't know why. And also, I just this
What? There's gonna be a nice
this
spike.
scene we're looking at right now reminds me. I was saying earlier that this game is not mechanically difficult, but it actually does. By the end, there are some segments that were not like they were. For me, I've been playing games my whole life. They weren't too difficult, but I think for somebody who has not played as many games, there's definitely some parts that were...
Look at Greg, crushing games.
Yeah.
Futch is here, by the way.
Welcome, Futch.
A voice appeared.
So good at games. This was easy.
I'm
it's
Kanye West of
it is
playing
no
video
Dark
games.
Souls. So.
Yeah. Did Dark Souls prepare you for Inside?
Dark Souls changed how I play games. I mean, like...
Change your life?
It made me play... Every game I play now, I play way more intentionally than I would have before. I played Dark
That's
Souls.
actually a well... I was trying to make a joke out of that, and you actually made a really good answer. Damn it. All right.
Well, Dark Souls really goes out of its way to enforce the fact that you can't just impose your will on the system. You have to play. You have to play within the system. Kind of like the reason that everybody thinks Castlevania is so freaking hard is because they refuse to play the game the way it's supposed to be played.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. It's just it does a certain thing, and it's doing it that way. And if you're not doing it that way, it's not interested in helping you.
Going back to... Well, I don't know if it would really tie in with what we were talking about with the lower review scores for PC gamers, but I wonder if you could take a similar stance on Inside in that you can't play it like a Twitch platformer.
Yeah.
But that might be a bit of a stretch.
Well, Inside's not as punishing.
No,
I think Inside really goes out of its way to make everything seem deliberate, where one of the worst things a puzzle game can do is make you think you have the answer, but you just screwed up doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, I know. I just have to make it so that when I hit this button, I have to run over there and jump on that platform. And then it's like, oh, the reason it didn't work is because I stink at making that jump. And then you do it 1,000 times and you realize you're just wrong. Like, you just wasted the player's time. And that's like a huge failure in game design when you're making a puzzle game. It's like, if somebody doesn't do your puzzle the way it's supposed to be done, they should obviously and deliberately have no chance of completing it that way. So, like, this game is definitely, even when you're swimming away from the crazy little
water baby,
there's things where it's kind of timed out, but it's not. Pretty much, if you get caught by the water baby, it's because you did something wrong. It's not because, and from a puzzle standpoint, and not because you hit the wrong direction on the control stick. Like, really, like, there's leeway there, there's forgiveness there. It's not pixel perfect platforming or having to be like exactly perfect swimming directions.
Right.
It's really just more like, did you do the thing you were supposed to do? If so, success.
Right.
If not, guaranteed failure.
Yeah, we we touched on that earlier because we were talking. But the point we were making earlier was that there's no UI, and the reason they can do that is because they don't do shit like what you just said. Like that, I can't think of a single time that I guess I couldn't say it never because maybe it did, but I can't think of
not a memorable time, which is what's important.
There's a couple of things you have to do properly that are like timing and not even really reflex based. Like, there's a spot where you have to jump up the ledge when the dog's about to bite you, or time your movement behind the wall when like the blasts are coming.
That was
and that is like
pretty
you do
tough.
have to actually do that properly to make it work. But you know the answer at that point. Like it's more
Right, there's like a rule set that you kind of know the game is working within, and it doesn't go outside of it. It's really consistent with that rule set.
so like the puzzles lend themselves to like, oh, I see how to do it, and then success, as opposed to just like smashing your head against the wall 50 times. Although, you know, I definitely died a couple of times in the blast area just because I did it wrong.
Yeah, that
But
blast area is
but for
pretty
the
rough.
most part, it doesn't do that. It allows you to keep progressing. None of the jumps are like pixel perfect. If you get it close, you get it.
Well, finishing gameplay. Let's move on to that juicy story. So, what is happening in this game? What are our thoughts?
Well, he's got a red shirt.
He does have a red shirt, so that means
What
he's
does
gonna
it
die.
mean?
Yeah, it's and this is where I've already gonna have put this in, but spoilers coming. Please don't get angry that we spoil this game because we're totally about to. So the game starts with you literally just sliding in to the game at the beginning, which is kind of neat. Like, all right, like you slide in and you then take control, and that's where you start. Very heavy Orwellian vibes, especially at the beginning. But at a very specific point, specifically when the water baby comes out, that the game, I still say the game just takes a turn. Like, just, it's like, obviously, yeah, it's not real because we have mind control people, but that is the point where it takes like a hard turn into almost supernatural territory.
Oh,
Like, because I think it's still like sciencey magic, but it's like, it's, you know, what, like science that's such a high level, there's no difference between it and magic, kind of.
yeah, I'd say it gets pretty supernatural.
It gets, like, I don't know if they straight up say, like, there's psychic things going on, or they keep it straight up, like, science, but either way, I can't tell. And it was a hard change. When it did happen, because there's a very hard point. They didn't ease into it like everything else. I felt they were pretty. There was a pretty steady climb. The pacing in the game is really good, and then it just boom, like just happens on a dime. I mean, maybe they're meaning to do that. I don't know, but I guess what are your thoughts? Anybody?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I agree. And a lot of what I got out of this game was in the second half, which is radically different from the first half. I would say the overall experience is good throughout, but I have different feelings on that point where it turns. I mean, I don't know when we want to get into... Like,
Do it.
it is such a difference.
So let's just start tearing into
I'd
it.
say the first probably 2 acts of this game are, like you said, very Orwellian. It's all about control. It feels very, you know, there's
it feels like what the
evil
trailer
government
showed.
kind of, you know, something's in charge, and then it takes a very hard left into.
A lot of the symbolism came in the second half for me, where I started noticing these recurring themes of fertilization and, you know, baby stuff. Like the big transformation that happens when this gets kind of weird is you fall in to the bottom of this water area, and before this you kind of find these weird little like long-haired babies that chase you underwater.
They look like the chick from The Ring.
Yeah, kind of. And they transform you halfway through by placing one of the hats that you're using for mind control onto your stomach, and you start falling, and it looks like a sonogram almost. Like, you know, there's this very clear baby imagery for you, the player, and then after that, you can breathe underwater. And I mean, debatably, this may be a stretch, but like sort of like a baby in the womb, right? Like they can breathe the fluid. Yeah, you being able to breathe underwater at that point changes the game entirely, but the symbolism like continues, where you get a submarine and you have to break through this wall, and it sort of seemed like a very sperm egg situation to me. There's a straight up vagina at one point that
We still have not confirmed the vagina.
it's there, trust me. And like right before you end the game, you pass through a vagina. I swear to God you do. And Like, there's just a lot of stuff like that happening in the second half, and there's, like, as far as I can tell, nothing like that in the first. The first half is more like hard sci-fi Orwellian things, like we were saying before, where it's a lot of, like...
It goes from this very totalitarian state, Orwellian, fear control system into a very David Cronenberg-esque body horror experience that leads to drastically different gameplay.
Well, you said in
pretty
the last
different
one it becomes
imagery.
Akira the game
Yeah.
in the last half, and I thought that was a pretty good description because it really just becomes about like sort of a very like the relationship between like flesh and machine and things and how those things interact and ways of thinking about them.
I'm currently rewatching this video to confirm the vagina or not.
It's hard to see on this.
I've
sound like backpedaling, but it really is hard to see.
I'm going back. I'm watching it. I have my screen turned all the way up. Like he's pulling the vents off. Like I mean, I can kind of see where you're coming from.
I'll prove it to you guys later.
All right, we'll prove the vagina later. Yeah, but yeah, like it feels very much like there's just two different games going on. And I'm not sure if I'm digging it or not, honestly. I like the first one. I like the first aesthetic. I like the first one's tone. So when they changed it on me, I don't think I fully bought into it. And that's about the point of the game where I started, I don't want to say checking out, but I liked it less, admittedly.
I don't know, I almost feel like it's the change in the game, in as much as it's story environment driven, I think it's also they just ran out of shit they could do.
Also
Yeah.
probably true.
With just
yeah.
to do with just the kid.
Yeah, I
And,
kind of
not
agree.
having the infinite underwater ability, like you had to get that so you can do the water on the ceiling puzzles, which was a cool change in the dynamic and doing some different stuff. And then the whole last 10% where the huddle becomes
The huddle. The giant
It's a whole nother completely different
human
gameplay
centipede
experience where you're
thing.
not really controlling the boy and solving puzzles like that anymore. It's a much more chaotic and demented. The puzzles aren't even hard. They're just kind of a crazy interaction with this new way of messing
It's
with the
learning a
environment.
new control set. Like everything's the same, but they react differently to.
They're very clear though in that transformation. Like to earlier when I was saying like they don't change the rules. I mean that's not entirely true. They do. But they make such a big deal out of it that you know what you're working
It's a very
with.
hard, this is now different, which I'm fine with that. Just because
has to be like that.
if like the giant mass of human flesh had reacted just the same as like this nimble little kid, it would have been kind of weird even
And
for
it
this game.
was a great change in tone even when it happens, because the whole game, if you're basically even spotted by a light, like you're instantly killed. Like the whole game, you're very fragile. You have to hide in the shadows. You really can't be seen or heard doing anything by anyone, or game over. When you get to the huddle, it all gets flipped upside down, where now you're smashing through walls.
You were the Hulk.
The dogs that can instantly kill you earlier now can't even touch you. Like,
Yeah.
they're not. They can't do anything to you. Like, and basically, there's nothing left that the game can do to stop you. It's gonna happen. Like, you're going to get out. If you just keep playing it, basically, the puzzles aren't difficult. It's all a matter of implementation and just doing them.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I don't want to be. I don't want to seem like I'm being negative on the game for like trying something different, especially for a game as simple as this. Just because, again, you're right. Like they had to do something different when there's only, bring it back to 4 mechanics. At some point, something's got to change, or the like.
I think the issue I had with it was that while I enjoyed the ending, everything else in the game up to the point of transformation, something kind of alluded to it. It all felt like a very cohesive whole. It all felt like it was part of the same universe. Things were hinted at. Even like from a mechanics perspective, from an artistic perspective, they hinted at things and then they elaborated on them. And I feel like the huddle is just so suddenly like
out of nowhere.
You're this giant lump of flesh now because of reasons. And like there was nothing that I caught prior to that was really that explored anything like that.
No, I mean, the whole kind of inevitable drive to the right, the inevitable draw, and the fact that you have to kind of keep moving to go farther and farther into this facility towards something, and it's nothing in the game even hints at what could be ahead of you. So, on one side, it did come completely out of nowhere, but on the other side, it could have been anything or nothing, and because the game just doesn't hint you in on anything, regardless. Like, it's not so much that like, oh, it's hidden there. It's like, no, the game told you nothing, and then it's just there.
Yeah.
Like it's not there to be found. It's just a mystery until it isn't. I did like that when you kind of come across the tank that the huddle's in, like everybody's looking into it.
Yeah,
And
that
you
was
can
that was.
and you can even run.
That
up
is a
to
really
it
good. Yeah, that is a
and,
good shot.
And look, and your character can kind of press up against the glass with the rest of the people, and they don't try to kill you.
And they kind of look at you like, who's this kid? But then it's like they look back because like it's like, who gives a shit? Look at this crazy thing that's happening inside the tank. Like,
Kid, giant, massive flesh. Kid,
they
giant,
almost
massive
care,
flesh.
and they're like, fuck it. Look, this,
But it's also
kind of
odd in the
stuff
sense
happening.
of like, what's the deal? Like, where did the huddle come from? Because the whole thing is like, why is this such a draw? Why are these people freaking out and running over and looking at the glass? Like, if the huddle was always just there, like if they were experimenting on this thing and this thing was just there this whole time,
That's a good point.
doing stuff. Why is it such a surprise? Why are they all staring through the grass? You know, at some point, anything becomes kind of rote, and the people who are working in this facility have seen some shit.
Right.
Why is this so
They
special?
probably saw the huddle every day, right? And so they don't ever. I agree. I was
Unless
kinda
the huddle
like,
was
so
brand
what's-
new and like it just happened, like
Yeah.
when the
Yeah,
game
but
started.
then, and then it's going into what's the kid been drawn to this entire time? Because he's been obviously going towards the huddle, and then we're going to get into the whole if the huddle's controlling the kid or not. But that's another thing. But he's going towards it, so theoretically, it's been happening for at least as long as that kid's been going there. So why is everybody like stoked about this thing now?
I don't know. I mean, it's really weird, and that's all you can really say about it.
Yeah.
It's really it's weird. I mean, there's a lot of kind of crazy metaphors that can be drawn that people have made, like the whole birth analogy and whatnot. Like, there's a lot. If you want to go down that road, there's a lot of things that point to like, it could be, that could be the point of like insemination. Like the whole point of like this kid was to get in, and he's kind of like the sperm looking for the egg scenario.
That kind of gives it
And
sentience, right?
And that becomes, when, the huddle by itself isn't anything, but when he gets sucked into it, now all of a sudden it
How he
becomes alive
loses
or
his
whatever,
clothes.
whatever it is, and it becomes
So wait, did
the
we
ability
describe
to
what
do
the
stuff.
huddle is? It's
I
just
think
a
we've
ball
alluded
of
to it.
Flesh
It's a-
with feet and arms sticking
Yeah,
out.
it looks like a spaghetti if the spaghetti noodles were made out of people. Like it's just all
That's the weirdest way to describe
it's just a lump, and
It's a Cronenbergian Akira nightmare.
it just looks pretty nasty.
And so the way you deal with it, it actually swims in a way that's like a stretchy balloon, but for most of it, you roll it around, and it feels actually really good to control, like surprisingly good. The
It
weight
feels
you get out of it.
It feels like this might get a little gross, but like the feeling you get like when you pop a zit or something, like it's gross, but you're like yes, and like it's oddly satisfying,
It is
especially
all very odd and deranged, but then when you're like going to like grab boxes and you can like move them from like all your different arms,
You, like, they
pass
hand
them
them
up
to
the
each
other
other.
ones.
Yeah.
It was cool to control that, and
Well, I mean, it was different, like, and it was, especially, I mean, you said it before, where like you've been this weak little chump this entire time, and now you're the Hulk,
Yeah.
right? Where you can literally steamroll over a dude,
Yeah.
which interesting scene, funny, but interesting.
Do you guys remember the part though, like when you're breaking through and everybody's trying to stop you and they're running from you? There's one part where a couple of people actually help you get through over an
Yeah.
obstacle, and
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
They're trying to
that.
get you into the
they're trying
trap.
to trap you. Like the whole
They're
thing is,
trying
like,
to
they
funnel
want
you
to get
in.
you to like where they're gonna drop you back in another tank.
Oh,
So
okay.
it alludes to the fact that on their end of this situation, they're figuring out a way to trap you.
Okay.
So you're only seeing them like in the background, but they're planning something out, and then they're all there. Which I do like how they finally do trap you, which is literally dangle a thing ahead of you, like come on, get it, and then
It's like a
bonk.
box on like a fish hook. They're kind of dangling it, and when you touch it, they drop you into the tank.
Like that's how they beat this thing, is literally just going like oh
Yeah,
It's not how they built this thing. It's how they beat you.
yeah.
yeah, and they're not.
And
good.
you knew it going
Scared.
in.
Yeah.
You knew like when that scene's like, oh, it's on a strength. There's a whole. Okay, well, there's no way else to do this. But it is, yeah. Again, I'm just not a biggest fan of the second half of the game. I mean, you guys, I know you've stated it just
I like the second half better personally. Just
maybe
because I really dug the symbolism of the second half, just the way they were delivering those things.
I don't know. I mean, I think the whole thing works together, especially from like the control angle of the beginning, middle, and end are all like various types of, the initial kind of feeding everybody into this factory situation, then you're finding about all these experimentations and all this craziness. And then even to the sense of the people that are helping you are really manipulating you into getting into this trap. Like, they're even still trying to be like, all right, this thing got out, but we can fix, like, we're going to make it do what we want to get back in the other thing because we're smarter and better than it or whatever. And even to the level, if you want to get meta about it, even to the level what you just said was like, well, I don't really want to do this thing, but I got to because that's the only thing that's going to make the game go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a puzzle game, like, the developers are completely controlling the player throughout this entire game because there's only one solution to every puzzle, and they make you do things you don't necessarily want to do. Maybe you don't want to smash through that CEO to go through that window. Well, it's the only way you can go. Like, maybe you don't want to jump back in that water with the freaking water baby, but you got to. If you got it, you have to jump back in on the other side and lure that baby over there to get past it.
lure that baby. Get that baby over there.
We could also call it Metal Baby because it does have a kind of metal hair. Like in that guys that listen to metal have long hair often.
Nathan Explosion, the baby.
Yeah. I think it just kind of goes with what you were saying, Chris, was like, since I feel like that second half was kind of spoiled to me because the huddle comes so far out of left field.
I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I really like the Orwellian aspects of the first half.
Hang on, no more Orwell. That word's banned.
It is overplayed. Yeah, all right. The
That aesthetic that we will not
the
name.
Georgian.
The Georgian. The 1984-esque experience that is part one. And then, again, the sort of odd Japanese body horror you experience in the second half. It's just, I don't know. I felt that you can do inconsistency like that in something and make it feel appropriate. And in this, to me, it felt sloppy. Again, like to Futch's point, it was kind of like they ran out of things to do with the character as the child, so they just threw this completely new thing at you to do more stuff.
It wasn't as smooth of a transition as it could have been. I think it was going like it seemed very clearly that what the second half is where they I think they wanted to be there. I think they just didn't know quite how to get there, so it doesn't really mesh as well.
But I mean, there's all the whole, was it the huddle controlling the kid the whole time? Because where the hell does the kid come from? And like,
yeah.
I mean,
how did this kid get in this situation?
That goes to the possible secret ending. So I guess let's explain the real ending first before we go into that. So after you get trapped by the scientists, you eventually break your way out through the vagina, and then you. I'll give it to Greg. I'll let Greg have the vagina.
I'm honestly like very unhappy that you guys disagree because I can't.
It's not that we disagree. We just don't see it.
I don't disagree at all. I think that your view of that on this plays to this game's greatest strength in that it's a piece of art. It is open to interpretation, so you see what you make of it.
There's not a lot of details, so you can.
And I'm not saying oh, Greg just sees vaginas all the time. It's just, I think that
it is true.
The subject
that is true, though.
Of I think that there's subject matter there that might be pertinent to you right now, whether conscious
this
or
is
not.
actually just a Rorschach test.
No, but to me, honestly, it's not even up to interpretation. To me, in my opinion, and this is just the way. Like, I'm not trying to say you guys are wrong. I'm just trying to really just like
see the vagina.
It's one way of looking at it.
Yeah. I really am convinced that there is very deliberate symbolism in that part.
Absolutely true. And the thing is, I agree with you. Yeah. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, I guess it's way more fun to give me a hard time about it.
But especially since the fact that you are a giant blob thing now, and you've been making your way towards the center this whole time, and all of a sudden you plop out this new thing.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry, but
So
digress.
you break your way out. Long story short, eventually at some point you bust through a wall, you roll down a hill, losing many limbs along the way, and then you just land on like this creek bed, and you just sit there.
In the sunlight.
And you just
Yeah, it's like in the first element, the first bit of daylight that you really genuinely see in the game.
yeah, I think so.
I mean,
might
there's
be.
You get
Well,
moonlight and then
no.
overcast.
it's very warm.
Oh,
It's
no.
definitely the purest light
Yeah.
in the game.
In
for
the
sure, yeah.
the original Georgian part, there is a blue sky at
Right,
certain
well,
points.
That's actually
but
what I
it's
was
not.
thinking of. It's like
it's
more
not
like a
shining.
twilight though than a.
Yeah, it's
right.
definitely going later and
You
later.
get
and
the
later.
you get the god rays basically is what's
Yeah.
coming down.
Yes, there's definitely.
But it's nothing else in the game is like where it's
No.
you can almost feel the warmth of the sun in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So and then I think you sit there for a few seconds and then roll credits and that's it. I think I swear you twitch a couple times, but that's it. But other than that, I don't think
Yeah, it's
they
just
move.
so you like roll out into the light and then it's just a slow zoom out into like credits eventually, and it's
Yeah.
a very like, kind of end like
So after that craziness, we're now gonna sit here.
yeah.
It's very deliberate in how they want you to stop and think for a moment about
Yeah.
everything you just
and I'm not
witnessed.
sure what they're saying right there.
I couldn't get over the fact that I'm like, dude, you haven't escaped yet. They're still right there. Like, there's a giant hole in the wall.
See that window they're looking at?
Yeah, like there's a giant hole where you just burst through. They know where you are.
Yeah.
You've gone like 300
And you
feet.
just tumbled down a giant rock face and got all your legs and arms broken off.
Yeah. So
I mean, maybe that's it.
maybe that's because I mean, we don't know if it lived or not.
No.
So who
I don't know,
knows?
Futch, what does the ending mean? Definitive answer,
Tell us, Futch.
John Futch.
Got me, man. Like that's what I'm saying. It's all very odd, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Super Hot, even in that it's fine to make a piece of art that like is to sponsor a discussion. I personally get annoyed when people go out of their way to make things vague for no other reason than to be like, think about it.
Yeah, that's
Like
that's a
well,
very real thing.
You're a coward.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that-
exactly. I
you-
hate that.
You
Yeah.
are not being honest. You are not expressing yourself. You are making it so that nobody can criticize your
Yep.
decision.
Yeah.
You're
That's
scared
so
to
real.
take a stand
Yeah.
on a position. And you're scared to try to make a statement that you might think
That's how I
might be
feel
too
about,
much or too literal,
like-
or not important enough, or
I
maybe
mean-
you don't want to be pretentious. Now,
was- yeah.
now here's the thing: like, it's fine to make things vague sometimes. I don't think every single story has to have a perfect ending. I don't think every story needs to tell you exactly what every little thing in it meant, or like if something is like symbolic and metaphor for something. It can be both of the things. It can be the story that's on the surface, and it can be allegory for something else. Like this happens time and time again in art and literature, and in games. But there's other times where it's just like the end ? And it's like, well, use like the first thing that comes to mind is like something like the end of Inception, right? Where it's like didn't need to
yeah.
be that way.
Yeah.
There's really no reason to be that way other than to be like, did it or didn't it? See, it's like, it's one thing to make it vague to make you think about things it could be, but if it's a binary thing and it can only be one of those two things, and it specifically definitely is one, and you just leave it completely open and refuse to answer that question, I think you're just being weak.
But
Like
I think
That's
there-
kind of
there-
tying it back into the first
don't know,
game
there's-
club.
And so I
Bring it
guess what I'm
back.
getting
Oh,
at is
yeah.
like this
Yeah.
one can be a lot of things.
I like
I don't
it.
think it needs to be specifically this is the one thing it can be because I've heard a lot of interpretations about it. So it's a little bit. So I don't hate on this one like I did some of the other like for some of the stuff even in like Super Hot where they kind of almost went out of their way to be vague about certain things when they didn't have to be. A lot of the other things in the game are very sure. This one is vague from beginning to end, and they use a lot of classic symbolism and there's lots of insemination and birth symbolism in it. There's a lot of control and dystopian, overdone, humanity gone wrong, like and classist society type situations that they show. They use all of these things kind of together.
Yeah.
And it allows people to kind of draw out of it what they might, which makes it more a piece of art than a piece of cowardice.
Yeah, so you think
so-
they just kind of failed in communicating an idea, not that like
I think there's clearly an idea behind it, and I'm only slightly annoyed that they refuse to say what it is, and I don't hate them or think that they have to say it.
Yeah.
It's only a slight annoyance.
Yeah.
Where it's a
mean,
matter of
it's a
they
feature of the
clearly
game.
I believe they clearly had a vision for what this is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
But it's so close to so many other things that it can be interpreted many ways. It could be
Yep,
a complete
I
story about control on every meta level of like government and society, and even the interaction between the player and the character and the game designers and the player.
Yeah.
There's control on every level.
Yeah.
There's also, the birth metaphors. Also, I brought up on the last time we talked about this, somebody wrote a whole thing about how they thought the whole game was about someone who has cancer, and about how they thought the entire game was a metaphor for, the boy was basically a malignant cell of cancer that was invading a body, and all of the characters in white lab coats and all the people that are trying to stop you are the different autoimmune responses of the body trying to get rid of this invader.
White blood cells.
And then when you become the huddle, that's when it becomes malignant. It's a tumor, and then it's rampaging through the body, causing all types of damage. And then the scientists at the end that are helping you and trying to trap you are like the doctors like treating you and like trying to stop it and whatnot. And it's, again, I think it's a really interesting interpretation. I think there's a lot of places that falls apart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
It's still a cool thought, though.
But it's the fact that you can draw so many data points and write this other kind of take on it means that it's it is more a piece of art where you kind of you put yourself into it a little bit and take away what you want, as opposed to it has to be one thing for it to be valid.
Yeah. No, I mean, I actually found that article afterwards too, just because I was curious. I don't agree with it, but it's believable, which I think is the crucial detail. Like it's not like one of the theories where like you're insane, you're pulling something out of nothing. It feels like with this game they legitimately could be right with the ideas that they're pulling out when
Now
the
that I think
symbolism.
about it a little bit more, and I just said that out loud, I wonder if it could even be something to do with like AIDS. And I say AIDS specifically because one of the things that AIDS does is it turns your immune system against itself.
Yeah.
And all the things where you like jump in and the invading cell, the boy, takes control of the white hats, the white blood cells, so to speak, and makes them do things for him to allow him to advance. So I mean, there's a lot of ways you can kind of keep applying it. If it depends on the lens you put on it.
Sure. I'm a bigger fan of the more abstract view of this game is about control and power and futility.
Yeah, I agree with that more than anything. And that was my first, like the whole way through.
That's
was what I was
certainly
thinking
the
about.
clearest theme.
Yeah, because I mean, it's we can get into the secret ending that elaborates on that more later. But
Actually, I'll pull it up right now.
I mean, as a whole, you have a limited amount of control as the child turn around, and the environment around you and the things that are happening in the story as it progresses. It's obvious that there is power being exerted by other people on large groups. Again, Orwellian. I said it. And then at the end, when you become the huddle, suddenly none of that matters. So it's I kind of like the idea that power is a fleeting thing, and this game is kind of a reflection on sort of a nihilistic take on what people deem, trying to get control over things, and that can only last so long.
And I guess maybe the ultimate theme is that we can't control life, and that could be really what the game's getting at, because a lot of this, there's like just some incredible, massive, just like machines in this game where like there, that whole blast area. It's like, what are they doing over there?
Yeah.
Like, there's just
What purpose
nothing.
did that thing
Right, like
fit?
what's that
Yeah.
coming from? Like, there's just these incredible machines, and at the end of it, they can't really control the life that they're creating.
So, yeah,
or
what-
maybe whatever they're doing with it, they can't control it, and that might be it.
Would you
Yeah.
say life finds a way?
That's actually
There's
exactly what I'd say.
yeah.
I mean, Also to like how things change, like when they're in the huddle, like the whole time, you got these massive machines and these groups of people and the dogs and the water baby and the whole thing, and everything's kind of, any one of those things is forcing you into paths and making you do things and killing you or stopping you if you don't do it right or whatever. But then when you become the huddle, it all kind of gets flipped and they can't control you anymore. Like nothing matters anymore. Like not even the environment can stop you. You smash through you literally smash through walls and rip down like the impenetrable things that you had to think your way through before. Now you can just blast through it and exert your own will on what's happening. And if you wanted to make it a whole thing about control and society or whatever, you could kind of show or say that the boy is kind of like one person trying to navigate these structures, but the huddle is what happens when people push back in a group.
Oh, that's really good.
And when people like
Greg's
form
eyes just
together
lit up.
and create a resistance and protest and a group of people
Strength in numbers.
can stop all of this shit, and they can't be controlled if they are working together towards one goal. Like they can change the environment, they can change the systems. They don't have to obey the rules of the control. But the one boy alone has no chance until he becomes this mass.
It's funny, now I'm thinking about it, the whole idea of, strength in numbers, they straight up call that out prior to getting to the huddle when you actually have to collect a number of people,
you have to bring the people
and bring them to a giant platform to open a doorway.
You can't lift those doorways by yourself.
Right.
You're going to recruit a bunch of those zombies.
Yeah.
There's also the idea that like another reason I like that is because the essentially the spark that brings the huddle to life is a young boy, and I mean the idea that you can fix and change the world is like definitely a youthful idea. Like as people get older, they stop thinking that way, and I feel it happening to me where I feel less like I need to change the world and more like I need to carve out my place in the world that exist as a bigger thing than me. And so I like that idea that you just proposed, John, because I mean this might be a thing I'm reading too much into, but that adds up in a really cool way to me that I really like. Yeah.
I dig that as well.
Sir.
Just my good sir. Actually, I do like that concept. It's still, the whole thing was still weird to me, but it makes it a little bit of an easier pill to swallow, I think.
Yeah, I actually feel like I do understand this game. When we started this podcast, I didn't think I did.
You realize this podcast is just group therapy session, right? Like we go through a weird thing and then we talk each other through it.
It's really fun. I like
Yeah. We got donuts and coffee. It's great.
Oh my God, why don't we have donuts and coffee in here?
Hang on a second. We got donuts and coffee.
Wait.
Oatmeal raisin cookies and coffee. So we're close.
Yeah. And beer. We got a lot of beer and bourbon. But so finishing up on that ending. So as I said before, there's 14 total different hidden things that you have to find through the game, and they're hidden away, sometimes even behind puzzles. You find 13 of them to unlock the last one, which is actually at the very end, where instead of going down into where the huddle is, you go, or go up into the huddle, you go down, I believe. Into either or. You go the opposite direction of the huddle. So it's actually like the huddle is not involved in this at all. That entire section of the game is just cut out. And it's going to just this specific ending. So you see all these lights, and it's just a big version of the ball thing that you've been finding. You pull it all out, and all the lights turn off except for one, which was the second one you found in the game. And in this game, you can load any checkpoint at any time. I think you literally just hit the back button and you select which one you want to, and it just plops you right in there. So you can go back to one of the initial areas, which is the farm field that I have behind me. And when you first went into this area, there was a door with a switch that you could not open. You can now open that thing. I'm going to start playing the video behind me. And first off, finding that trapdoor is a nightmare.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, it's like sort of side content, so I'm forgiving of it, but I feel like and also, so that door you find is pretty friggin' cryptic, but even more cryptic is this thing you have to do once you get down there, where it's like you have to play these tones, and you find the tones though are played in area way later in the game. And you have to like.
There's a
somehow
couple
know.
of the hidden areas that have this radio that plays a song.
Yeah.
And you have to break down what those notes are, and not just the notes, but where they go up on the scale and if they go left or right.
Yeah.
And that's how you switch up, down, left, or right, and it's not fun. So the thing's playing
I
behind me
didn't think
now.
it was that direct, actually. No, that makes it a little less.
It was something,
still
yeah.
pretty-
It was something pretty absurd that I totally would not have figured out without a walkthrough. So the kid is playing in the background. He's going through a tiny little tunnel thing.
You know, because the symbolism here. No, just kidding. It's just water.
So he's actually going back into the vagina on this one.
All right, so he gets inside.
Cut this out. Name drop.
I did it.
That's the end of the podcast, everybody.
He said the thing.
He gets in. He gets in through the cornfield to this, like, basically he swims underwater to this
Bunker.
buried bunker thing, and
Which-
there's a giant plug in the wall that's about as big as he is.
So he goes into apparently the location of, like, the central location for all the mind controls, apparently under a farm, by the way. Now you can see what I've been watching lately on my YouTube. But so he goes down there and he finds it. And there's like the central location, there's a mind control helmet in the background with a ton of cords into it. So like this is the central one, or at least is something akin to it. You find a plug on the wall, you unplug it, everything turns dark, and the most important feature is the kid falls down like one of the zombies.
Yeah.
Like when you unhook yourself from the helmet in the game, the zombies all just kind of like drop to their knees and just kind of like go limp in a sense. When the kid unplugs that plug, he does the same thing. So this is heavily alluding to the fact that the kid's being controlled by something else. The huddle, maybe, something other force, who knows?
I think that this particular ending is focused. It's a little too explicit, in my opinion, and it's all about, again, going back to control. It's pointing to player control of characters in games. Something I didn't talk about previously is that in order to get to this ending, you have to do some of the most video gamey shit in this game.
That's true.
Like ever.
Collectibles.
You have to find hidden collectibles and then go to a secret entrance. At no point anywhere else in this game is there anything like that you have to do.
It's also the only achievements in the game, too, is finding those things.
Right.
So otherwise, you would not get an achievement in this game.
I feel that had to be intentional as a design choice.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, because it's just because, like, I feel like it's not really what the game is after. It's an interesting angle to the game. I don't know. Like, I just don't think the part of unlocking the secret area is really a super important part of the game.
It's not, which is why it's a secret ending, in my opinion.
It's. I feel like it's an alternative because I want to say this actually came out after the game's release too. I don't think it came out at the exact same time, or at least it wasn't implemented entirely. It was. I think you could get the 13, but it wouldn't unlock the 14th one until a later update. Again, this goes back to my point before, which is I feel like this is an ending for the first half of the game, whereas the other one is an ending for the second half. If we're like kind of saying that they're two different tones, two different, at least like, I don't even know, rule sets. I feel like this is like an ending for the first one, where it's like, okay, you've been interacting with, the big thing you've been interacting with are the zombie people. Let's answer that, or at least allude to what's going on there. Whereas the second half is, okay, there's weird shit going on. This is what the weird shit is about.
I would like to throw out, we're watching some footage of the game, not too far from the point at which you become the huddle. And I know earlier in this, I talked about how there was no sort of hints at what was to come with the huddle. And I'd like to retract that statement. I completely forgot. There's a section where you get a number of these sort of zombies that follow you around.
There's a whole bunch of sections where you're controlling big groups of them, where you have them pick them up, like
Well, yeah. But
pick you up or catch you.
in this particular one, a lot of these zombies, you look at them, they're not built like people. There is
There's like a
something,
head sticking out of the side.
yeah,
of
there's
them
something
and stuff.
very wrong with some of those bodies, especially in comparison to all the ones prior. These ones are all
Like
mostly
normal?
naked. Yeah, they're missing like limbs or heads, and they're all malformed. So
That's a really good point. Sorry, I just had a thought. I think maybe another way to think of these endings is, in the sort of default ending, I guess you could say, the ending you get without having to do all the things. I think the statement is sort of hinged on the idea that we control technology, but I think this alternate ending suggests maybe technology actually controls us, and we think we're controlling technology, right?
That's definitely a way of looking at it. Like, the second you unplug it, the kid drops.
Yeah.
I could see that at least being... I don't think it's what they're exactly driving at, but it's definitely a secondary thing, like unplug yourself from the machine, go outside sort of vibe in a sense. I feel like that's secondary. I don't know if they're going for it, especially considering the game's called Inside, and like the whole time you're just driving towards this center of the technology in a sense, to become one with the crux of it. The alternate ending, or I see these as pick your poison. Like, which one do you prefer? Like, if we're going towards the whole art housey thing of you take from this what you will, they're even going to give you a different ending with which to choose from. I don't know if that's necessarily good or not, but they're giving you options like, okay, I'm going to plug this part and this part in and this part in, and this is what my take out of it is.
Yeah, I think the two endings are sort of, neither is wrong or right. They're just two ideas that are equally valid.
Yeah. And the hidden stuff, honestly, is not hard to get. It's some of them you stumble across. Like, there's literally just yellow cords or that you see. When you see them, guess what? There's something nearby. And I think, with the exception of one, the puzzle that sometimes you have to unlock into them are actually really interesting. The one that I really remember is the fire, like when the dogs are coming at you and you're trying to get to the fire, and you're keeping them away. It's one of my favorite puzzles in the game because it was really interesting, and it was a time where you could kind of defend yourself from something.
Yeah, I didn't get to play that one.
That one's honestly my favorite. That's the one I remember.
Yeah.
So I think it's a choose your poison type thing.
Again, open to interpretation. The game is art.
I do like how they literally, you don't like this ending or it doesn't fit your perspective on the game, here's another one, see what this is. I think I like it. I feel like the part of the reason why I liked this ending too is the fact that I didn't like the other one, and so I just kind of defaulted to this. That's not good, but I just did not like that the default. It goes back to the to me, I felt like the huddle just took too long. That should have been a couple. You weren't in it for that long. It's realistically 4 checkpoints in the game out of 36.
Yeah.
But it just kept going, and there was a point where oh my god, this is still happening. We're still this was a novel thing, and then it's what's it like after you do something funny 3 times, it no longer becomes funny. And it's just all right, you're still doing
Nobody's
this?
Ever
Okay.
told me that rule.
Or just in general, but it just, I don't know, it felt like it just dragged on, and then when it was over, that was the payoff, was me watching this thing sit on a creek bed with everybody still right behind it. I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, just
I don't think it's supposed to.
It's not. And nothing in that game is supposed to sit right, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
I was wanting it so badly to set itself on fire. There was 2 or 3. I was getting some very heavy vibes through that whole
there's
section.
A spot where you get up to the only way to go, and it ends with an incinerator.
I thought you were going to throw yourself into it.
When I first saw it too, I thought, all right, I was supposed to climb in here.
Oh yeah.
But now you gotta put the box in there and get it on fire and then throw it into something else.
Into another thing, I was it's going to this other fire thing. Nope, we're still okay. I can't help but think, all right, what is that thing gonna do now? It's a giant mass of flesh in the wilderness now. Like what's its like? At least if it killed itself, there was like, all right, it put itself out of its misery. Now I just can't help but think, now what's it gonna do?
I think that
That's going way too much into it. I know.
Yeah,
but
'cause
I can't help it.
I feel like because that is the way the story ends, it's like there's nothing more to tell. Beyond
Yeah.
that. That's all you need to know about. They've said all they need to say.
I mean, I think also, another message you could derive from that is that we do all these things to chase progress, and we build all these crazy things and do all these crazy things when in reality what makes us happy is fairly simple.
Just going into a giant flesh pile.
Which is obviously just making a flesh pile with people you know.
Obviously.
Back
So
to the pile.
But Buffalo Game Space Human Pile next Thursday. I don't like it, again. I enjoyed the game as a whole, so I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm just saying
Wait, this thing is the ending right there.
It is. You're right. Holy shit.
Yeah, there's a diorama you
Yeah.
fall in. That's one of the things. It's like when you get outside at the end,
Yeah.
like that you're still actually like in a bigger thing. Like the whole time you've been heading in so much that like how are you possibly just go through one wall and you're outside? Like how does that make sense?
that's a good point.
Like,
Yeah, so there's an
Interesting.
interesting theme of like recursion, right? Which is totally what like life is. It's just like you get these, the reason when you fly over the United States and you look down and it looks like an organism is because like that's just kind of how things end up adding up. Is like life has this recursive pattern to it. So I totally dig that.
That said, I saw that diorama thing too when I came smashing. Here's like the boss.
This poor guy. Boom. Oh, he's still there.
Yeah,
Oh,
And he's not still there.
the quarterback is toast. And so it's also like you're kind of almost in this weird office-y thing, and it's not beyond an office to have like a crazy stage setup scenario of like a scale version of like the environment that you're working in.
Right.
Like
It's
so it's
actually
not
pretty
completely insane
yeah.
to say that it is actually outside. They were working on something that they built like a scale version. And they were using
That's
it.
true too.
But they wouldn't
But it was
highlight
kind of like
it.
a diorama,
Yeah.
of like
But
where this thing was
the
going to end up.
But the thing is that in that diorama, that shaft of sunlight is in that diorama, and that seems really
Yeah, like how
Constructed.
could it just sit there?
that
Unless
takes
it was-
it from what you're saying.
It's
It could
very
be-
deliberate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could just be a larger environment that's a false light. It's not actually the sun. It's just another light.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
another,
Oh.
It's just another light. It's just another environment. You're still inside something.
Good God, this game, man.
There is a lot of strings
This is
to
way
pull.
better than what we came up with in the first podcast, actually.
Well, we had to get warmed up.
Yeah.
We got all the ideas going. Oh, again, you can keep pulling strings off of this thing and like just going down the rabbit hole. I feel you keep going inside.
But I feel
Nothing.
like that's
Nothing.
not...
No.
We already did that. Remember, I did it.
I'm trying to.
But I
wanna
think
be like you,
that's
Greg.
a very intentional strength of the game, and not a sort of a flaw that emerges because of a lack of direction or sloppy execution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is definitely the game to spur thought, and they nail that. If that was their goal, they destroyed it. Like
It's a really great game.
yeah. So I guess final thoughts.
If you haven't played it, play it.
Yeah, can't recommend it enough.
Pretty short. It's pretty not to the point, but
I'd like to see actually, if for anyone listening,
interesting.
I was gonna say for anyone listening, if you have played it, or if you're going to play it, please do so, and then comment and share your thoughts and interpretations.
Please
of the game.
tell us, because we want to know.
I'm more than curious as to what other people get out of this game.
Yeah, I'd be a fan of that.
Yeah.
It was very bizarre. I thought it all started very kind of like it was one thing, and then especially once the stuff with the water babies and the umbilical cord, I was starting to be like, wait, what? Wait, now there's water on the ceiling. But then when you get to the huddle, I was just like, the hell is going? I guess we're doing this now.
Yep,
What the hell?
we're going into it.
I thought it was pretty much the end. I didn't know I was going to play for another 20
Yeah.
minutes as the
Yeah.
huddle. As a piece of art, it's pretty great. The gameplay is really simple. The implementation is very polished. I think I said it last time, but I always appreciate things that do a lot with a little, and this is very... The gameplay and basic physics and puzzle mechanics of this game, if you did them with squares and circles, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it at all. It'd be like, yeah, whatever, those were puzzles. Like, the puzzles aren't in and of themselves like ingenious or make you feel like... The game doesn't like put your brain to the test of like, you solved something incredibly hard to understand and broke down the system or whatever. It's like, no, if you know how to poke a system, you'll figure it out in a minute or two.
Yeah.
It's more about traversing this environment and interacting with these wild, crazy, highly smoothly animated characters and creatures with this very unique style of lighting and mood that turns it into something more that we can sit here and talk about it and meaning all these different things.
And not stop ever.
Whereas minus, some of the basic, crazy huddle stuff, the base running and jumping and pulling and climbing mechanics of this game are nothing special in their own right. But you put a really highly polished and well-executed artistic execution on top of it that's animated, top-tier animation, just like super smooth, feels great, nice weight, and it turns it into something completely different.
Yeah, in a lesser year, this might have been my goatee, but last year was just bananas. There was so many good games.
It was a pretty solid year.
But this was definitely in my top 5.
So I guess on that note, 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10 Doritos.
Yeah, 4 out of 10 Doritos, no kill streaks, and so as such,
I would give this game a solid 9 out of 10 huddles.
9 out of 10 huddles.
That's really
What
bad,
is
actually.
what does one huddle equal? That I don't. Is that good? Is that
I don't know,
bad?
like 6 Doritos?
Yeah.
Whatever,
Oh wow.
He's like, wow.
Wow. 9.
I've never seen a score that high.
I've never seen so many huddles. I mean, it's true. All right. Well, on that note, so we get to choose the next one now. And this might be spoiled a little bit, but I'll still go through the rule set anyway, just for first-time listeners.
Can't wait to find out what it is.
Yeah. So what we do is we have a Google Doc, and we got a random number generator, and I hit numbers into it, and then I hit another button, and it spits me out a number, and I see what that number correlates to on the Google Doc. We get one opportunity to veto if we have a vote, and if we're just not feeling it, or it's a little too similar to what we just played, we want to do something different, we can't veto it. However, the next one we must stick with. So we did this last time, but I'll say it anyway. The next game is...
Well, first we came up with Life is Strange.
Oh, yeah, we came up with Life is Strange, and that was a no.
It got vetoed primarily because there was already a lot of people who had played it, and also we talked about it a lot on the podcast like 6 months ago.
Also, we wanted to just shoot shit,
Yeah,
I think was the general...
Yeah, that was a
After
very
playing
heavy...
Side, we were kind of
yeah.
like, let's blow stuff up.
We wanted something a little lighter on narrative.
So we came up
We've
with...
had 3 pretty philosophically heavy games the past couple times. So let's try something a
So
little
we
different.
re-rolled when we got Life is Strange.
We re-rolled and got Heavy Bullets. So Heavy Bullets is our next game for whenever the hell month it's going to be recorded in.
Oh, what's the date today, and like what episode number is it?
I said that at the very
did it at the
beginning.
start.
Did he?
Yeah.
I
That's
do
how
that.
bad
to-
at it I am. Even if somebody does it, it's lost on me.
I literally it's right there. That was the first things I said, man. Thanks for listening. But so if you want to play along, go get Heavy Bullets. I think it took me a grand total of 30 seconds to download on my Wi-Fi yesterday.
The beauty of roguelikes and procedurally generated content.
I'm pretty sure it was like 1.8 gigs.
Cool. I'm looking forward to this.
So yeah.
I like the aesthetic. It looks very much like something I've been working on.
Is it something you've been working on? Is this your great come out moment?
No.
Oh.
Plot twist. Greg made Heavy Bullets.
Plot twist, we've actually been the people to make all the games we talk about here. This is all us. This is actually just
Plot
our-
twist, we were dead the whole time.
I feel like that what I just said sounds to me like me being like, "Hey guys, I'm making stuff. I make cool games." It's just
We
like me
develop
finding a
stuff
reason
too.
To say it.
Don't we all?
Don't we just like talk about them? We don't actually make anything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, see you next time for Heavy Bullets. Bye bye.